Hello and welcome back everyone to the channel. Today we're sitting in Chicago in this snowy environment and we'll be talking about how you would fly, especially takeoff and land in weather situations like this. This is not uncommon for Chicago in winter times, so we have some pretty nasty snowfall, and I'm just gonna talk about how we would do it in the real airline world. So stick around and enjoy this video. So the first thing we want to do is calculate our takeoff performance here in our snowy conditions, as you can see outside. And it's really important to check the ATIS, and it doesn't work here unfortunately, but in our performance app with Boeing, so the OPT, onboard performance tool, that's what it's called, you would have to insert the depth of the snow or the contaminant. There's no option for this right here, so I just put in our wind 274 with 5 knots. It's minus 5 degrees centigrade, and we got standard pressure. And in case of contamination of a runway, doesn't matter if it's water or snow, so you would have to perform a full power takeoff with any contamination on the runway, which we do have tonight with snowfall on the runway. Usually we take it, or we derate our engines for takeoff to save engine wear, but due to contamination on the runway, you would use full power to get out of there. Also, you would have to put on your engine anti-ice for takeoff. So the wing engine anti-ice is used as a de-icer, but the engine anti-ice you have to turn on anytime it's below 10 degrees centigrade and there's visible moisture. So we have visible moisture and the visibility is below 1 mile. So we have to turn on the engine anti-ice, and we also are at minus 5 degrees. And when I hit calculate, it still gives me a selected temperature, so this is not really accurate because we do not want to derate the engines at all. We want full power to get out of here. Okay, so takeoff from a contaminated runway, flaps 15 to get airborne a little bit earlier and to reduce the required speed, and we're performing a full power takeoff since the runway is contaminated. So there we go, B2 is 141, we got flaps 15 set, and this is our takeoff power rating, 99.2% and 1. So we're blasting out of here. So I'm gonna release the parking brake. There we go, parking brake released. And then I will stabilize the engines, let them spool up. Engine stable. Hit the toga switch. Hit the clock.
Airspeed's alive.
There we go. Takeoff thrust set.
80 knots.
Checked.
V1. Rotate.
There we go, V1 and rotation. Get off the runway.
Positive rate of climb.
Gear up. And the aircraft is accelerating because we're using full power. And I do not want to exceed 25 degrees of pitch. At 1500 we should transition to climb power. There we go. Climb 2 has been selected. So I'm gonna lower the nose and we can go flaps 5 and flaps 1. Flaps up. Engage the autopilot here any second and do the after takeoff checklist. So autopilot is engaged. We're climbing to 9,000 feet. I'm gonna put heading select. Turn the aircraft around so we can come back in again for a ILS runway 28 center. And we just hit the checklist, and the after takeoff checklist is complete. So that is how you perform a takeoff on a contaminated runway. So full power, and usually flaps 15, flaps 20, of course, depending on what your performance tool indicates to you, but it's good practice to take flaps 15, for example. So there you go, and stick around. The next part of this video is going to be landing on a contaminated runway here in Chicago. So we're preparing the aircraft for our approach. I have the ILS 28 center set in the FMC. We got the points all checked and set the minimums. Baro 851. We're going to try it with a category 1. The ATIS indicated to us that the cloud ceiling is overcast at 1,800 feet, so we should easily see the runway. Unfortunately, the ATIS didn't give us an RVR runway visual range, which is really helpful and would be broadcasted in real life if it falls below a certain value. So there we go. We're gonna check our landing performance. I got the wind 274 with 5 knots, -5 degrees standard pressure, and we want to go flaps 30 for landing flaps, and the air condition on, engine and wings anti-ice and auto, and we got, it was not broadcasted, but let's say medium to poor. And let's figure out our estimated landing mass. So arrival at Chicago with 28.3, and we got 31.7. So 700 to 29, 1.7 to 2.7, and then we got 3.4 less, so it's 453. That is our estimated landing mass. So basically the fuel which we are expected to burn minus our gross weight equals our estimated landing mass. If we are planning with flaps 30, so our VREF speed is 137, and we're gonna add at least 5 knots onto this speed, so 142 should be our approach speed. So 453.3. Oops. So 453.3 for our landing mass, and we're going to calculate it. So required landing distance, it says 10,300, and we only have 10,700. This would still work, but you can see with medium to poor braking action we need a lot of runway. So if we would have medium, you can see we only need 7,900 feet. So it makes a big difference on how much the runway is actually contaminated. And of course, you can plan when it's contaminated on all reverses operating, because they help on contaminated runways. There you go. It's even less. Now we got 5,900 feet. And let's check it again for our medium to poor. 6,700 feet. So you see big difference with reversers operating on contaminated runways, and we actually have max manual. We can check for auto brakes 4. We got around 6,800. So I'm just planning for auto brakes 4 at the time. And you want to touch down nice and firm. Don't want to float too long, especially in conditions like these. And that is the main key here in flying an approach to a contaminated runway. So we're on final approach, 10 miles to the runway, and with the engine anti-ice on, the flight idle will be higher, so it's even more difficult to reduce the airspeed.
2,500.
There we go, 2,500 feet. And I'm still on VNAV path. It has not captured the glide slope yet, but it's armed. I go flaps 15. There we go, glide slope captured. Now we're gonna set the vista approach altitude 4,000 feet. There we go, let's go gear down, flaps 20. And flaps 15, flaps 20, they share the same speed. Obviously flaps 20 will produce more drag than flaps 15. The speed brakes, they are armed. You get the white message. And let's go flaps 30 for our final landing configuration. And our final approach speed, like we talked about it, 142, 147 plus 5 knots. As of right now, we don't really have wind. When cleared to land, I will put the lights on. There we go. This is the white bar indicating 1,000 feet above the aerodrome. That's where you want to be stable. Let's do the checklist. I skipped the other checklist. So landing checklist. Landing checklist is complete. 1,000 feet. We are stable. And now we're monitoring our systems and looking outside and inside on our displays and to see that we get visual with the runway. Of course, you could always fly a category 3 approach when you have bad weather, but let's try it with a Cat 1. I already have ground contact here, so that is a good sign. So we're below 500 feet. We're coming in on the ILS 28 center, and I will disconnect the autopilot as soon as we are visual to the runway. So
approaching minimums.
We're approaching our minimums, and I don't see anything.
Minimums.
There we have the runway lights at sight, so we can continue the approach.
100.
Manual flight.
$50, 40, 30, 20, 10.
And touchdown. Knots. And I'm going to disconnect the auto brakes. Auto brakes off. And we can locate here to the right. We want to move behind those lines here to be off the runway environment. You got to keep in mind the aircraft is pretty long, So you just taxi forward a little bit. And I will just set the parking brake here. And yeah, that's how you would fly a approach in bad visibility, snowy conditions. We saw the runway lights that is sufficient to continue the approach at minimums. I got a little bit high at the end, but we were in the touchdown zone, and actually the braking coefficient wasn't as bad as expected. So we made it to the ground safely, and we easily vacated the runway. But obviously in real life you want to make sure that you get all the data regarding the braking coefficient and the braking action on the runway, because as you saw in our calculation, it will influence the braking distance tremendously. So I hope you had fun, could learn something new in this video, and I will see you on the next episode. Thank you all for watching.